What's up, everybody? Welcome to the video. This one we're breaking down the Auto Trader Echo Park Automotive, I know, long name, 400 at Texas Motor Speedway. This will take place on Sunday, September 24th around 3 p.m. Eastern. And I'm looking forward to it. We're starting round 2 of the playoffs, and we know racing at these types of tracks, the next gen car, tend to be pretty good. And also, if this happens to be your first time here, which I highly doubt considering football season is in full swing, but if it does happen to be, what's up? My name is Pennell, and I break down NFL and NASCAR DFS each and every single week on this channel. And if you do enjoy today's content, or even if you don't, consider leaving a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet done so. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, you want to meet me in the comments, I totally get it. Let me know, and I'd be more than happy to hear from you. And really quick, I do have to mention the sponsors of the show, Prize Picks and Underdog, because they do make these videos possible. And as of right now, if you're a new user on either site, promo code CPEN will get you a deposit match bonus up to $100. And also, Underdog this week for NFL on their pick'ems, they have Lamar Jackson at 0.5 total yards. That's an easy over. So again, check it out and use promo code CPEN to get the deposit match bonus up to $100. All right, now that we have successfully sold out, let's talk some strategy here for this week's race. Texas Motor Speedway, typical 1.5 mile track, nothing too special to it. So if you're looking for similar tracks, we're looking at the lower wear intermediates like Kansas, Las Vegas. You could also look at Michigan, even though it's 2 miles in length, but we're pretty much just looking at all the intermediates this weekend, and also the specific tire combination, which I forget off the top of my head, but I do have that listed somewhere over on Patreon, and the green flag speed sorted out just specifically for that. But it's pretty much the same exact drivers every single time that are the fastest at these tracks. You're looking at Kyle Larson, Denny Hamlin. They were the best cars in practice over the course of a long run. Then you have William Byron, Tyler Reddick, Martin Truex Jr. It's just the familiar faces almost every single week. Yes, there's always going to be a couple of surprises, but I highly doubt it's going to be anybody other than the top dogs that we see at these tracks that are the fastest almost every single time. We'll probably see that happen again. And as far as dominators are concerned, we're probably looking at least 2 per build. We only have 267 laps this week, so it's about half of what we saw last weekend, so dominator points aren't going to be as abundant. And finally, moving on to the driver by driver breakdown here, I do have to mention one thing first, and that is, of course, if you want to check out all the extra content that I do offer over on Patreon, I do offer free week trials. If you want to come in, check it all out, projections, optimizer, ownership projections, sim scores, data sheets, everything you need, color coded nice and neat. So it's easy to follow. I also cover it for the NFL, going over statting out the entire slate, and in a similar fashion to what I do for NASCAR. You can check it out and link down below in the description or the pinned comment for that. If you like it, you can stay. If not, tell me to kick rocks. I don't really care either way. But anyway, let's kick it off here with the man, Kyle Larson, $11,200 on DraftKings, 13.5 over on FanDuel. Pretty much him and Denny Hamlin should always be the top 2 highest priced guys because they have been absolutely killing it this year. And I kind of agree with the top 4 pricing. I mean, that's pretty much what it's been for the majority of the season, and I think it should probably stay that way throughout, although I guess super speedways and road courses does change it. But when we're at like a normal track, it makes sense that these are going to be your big 4. And I almost feel like we can almost call these guys all the same exact plays because none of them are starting up front. They all start within 10 through 20, and they're all going to be front runners, going to be top contenders. So there's not going to be much separating them, but I will talk about them individually. Although I do think we can kind of group Larson, Hamlin as pretty much the same exact play on this slate. And for example, I was talking about it in the strategy where it's like the same guys up front every time. It's basically these 5 drivers plus Christopher Bell. So if we head over to the green flag speed cheat sheet, which is one of the things you can get over on Patreon, get access to all the data you need to help make your own lineups. So I have these averaged out just with the races we've been in the next gen car, some of it being this year. So if we look at intermediate green flag speed wise, sorted by that, Hamlin, Larson, Byron, Truex, Reddick. I don't think that's really too surprising. This one we have similar tracks to Texas in the next gen car, and doesn't really change. Hamlin, Larson, Byron, Truex, Reddick. We go to current track, which is next gen races this year that are pretty similar to Texas. Hamlin, Truex, Bell, Larson, Reddick. Again, similar drivers. And then we have the tower combination we're using this week, and as you can see, Hamlin, Truex, Elliott, which is kind of surprising. Then Larson, Bell, Byron, Reddick. And if we go to my overall, looking at putting it all together, Hamlin, Truex, Larson, Byron, Bell, Reddick. So it's pretty much the same exact guys that are going to be the fastest every single time. So I don't want to try to make this too difficult on us. We just got to pretty much mix and match those drivers for the most part because it's very, very likely that at least one of those guys will be up front dominating, and pretty likely that it'll be a combination of 2. So Larson and Hamlin, these are going to be your top 2 plays on the slate, in my opinion. If you're looking at what we saw in practice, they were pretty much the top dogs across the board. If you look through the 10 and 20 lap runs, first and second in each of those categories. Larson starts one spot further back, and he did edge out Hamlin in practice, so I guess we'll give him the slight edge. Plus, he's been averaging more dominant points at these track types thus far. They're both opened up as the odds-on favorites to win this race, and that's going to be a common occurrence, I think, throughout the rest of the playoffs. And these are definitely my 2 favorites to win. I know that's not a hot take or anything, but it's just hard to beat these 2 drivers. So if you can't fit both, I would say probably Larson over Hamlin, but I'll be mixing and matching both quite heavily in my builds. And I'd like to be able to fit them both in together, but I realize that might be a little bit difficult. William Byron, $10,800. He's starting in 18th. A very similar play to Larson and Hamlin, so I do understand if you want to go that route instead, because you get 8 extra place differential points, and they'll probably be very similar plays at the end of the day. But he's a little bit cheaper, and you do get that extra PD, so he's right in line with them. I just don't think he's going to be as fast to get the dominator points, but the place differential can make up for that. And we do see at these kind of tracks where the dominator points do get spread out quite a bit. We don't usually see one guy dominate the entire race. Martin Truex Jr., $10,500. He's starting in 16th. I hate to sound like a broken record, but pretty much the same exact play as William Byron, just a little bit cheaper, not as much PD, but he too has shown plenty of speed at these track types. Tyler Reddick won this race last year, albeit with a different team and in a different car, but starting in 15th, we're going to keep sounding like a broken record, but a pretty similar play to Truex and Byron. But according to practice, his car doesn't look as good, 13th in the 10, 11th in the 15, so I would say he's definitely looking like the worst play in this 10K group, but that shouldn't be, I don't want to make that sound like I don't like him at all. I'll still have exposure, but I can't play everybody, so I'll probably be the lowest on Reddick there. Dropping down to the 9K range, we have Christopher Bell, who took a bit of a spin in practice. Obviously, no damage in his car is fine. Went for his 4th straight pole, ended up going up the track a little bit, so did not end up happening. Obviously, practice didn't look that great, but Bell's one of those guys that, looking at the green flag speed numbers and his numbers at these types of tracks, he should be somewhat of a contender. I'm not expecting him to dominate this race, and I realize some of these numbers aren't looking too pretty. Can be a bit skewed. He's had some poor luck, but we know he's got a fast car, and I think he's firmly in play only for tournaments. Can't get there in cash games at that price point. I do want to give him a shout out for last week because he started on the pole and he didn't screw up. I feel like every single time Bell's on the pole, he just destroys his race and doesn't dominate. But he took care of business last week, over 100 fantasy points, I believe, so I've got to give him a shout out. Also, shout out to Denny Hamlin for winning, plus 800. I truly appreciate that, Den, especially with good timing. I put a tweet on Twitter. I'll put it on the screen right now. But extra special to me, so got to give you a shout out for that. Kyle Busch, $9,600. He is starting in 7th. So he's in the car that won it last year, but they are much different drivers. But he was fast in practice. 3rd in the 1 lap, 9th in the 5, 5th in the 10, and 3rd in the 15. I think he should be on our tournament radar, very similar to Christopher Bell. I prefer Bell. I just love that speed from the Toyotas at these types of tracks, but Busch will be in the player pool. But I feel like he'll be one of those drivers that won't pop much on the optimizer, and you kind of have to force him in there, but he could be a little bit sneaky. Ryan Blaney at $9,400. If you're looking for PD, I feel like I'd rather just play Chase Elliott here for $100 less, and starting in 29, 6 spots further back, especially over on FanDuel. I assume he's going to be very chalky over there. Blaney was a little bit better in practice. Elliott was 10th in the 10 lap and 7th in the 15, which I believe only 12 drivers did the 15 laps. So I wouldn't say it's a great representation of the actual speed, but we know both these drivers should be able to move up. And I don't usually like Fords at these track types, but Ryan Blaney is one of the few that does tend to show some speed. So it should be a top 15 contender. Still in the playoffs, obviously, so they're going to want to run well. Chase Elliott, at that price point, starting in 29th, he's a fine cash game play. You can fit him alongside a guy like a Denny Hamlin and a William Byron. By all means, I think that sounds pretty good. And then after that, we dip into the 8K range, and then we have 4 drivers right in a row that are basically the same play. And it's going to be kind of tough to stomach to roster any of them just because there is like zero room for error for where they're starting. And it's not like we have as many downer points as we had last week. So you have Bubba on the pole, and we have the 2 RFK boys right behind him in 2nd and 3rd. Then we have Ross Chastain starting in 5th. And these are all 4 wild cards, especially guys like Bubba Wallace, Ross Chastain. RFK basically runs the same exact, like every single week. If Buescher's in 4th, Keselowski will be in 5th. If Keselowski's in 24th, Buescher will probably be in 25th. I mean, they're just glued together. Looks like they had some really good qualifying speed. Definitely a lot better than where they practice. If you're looking at the overall numbers, 15th and 20th and 11th, 10th The thing is, I don't think they're going to be the best cars on the track, but that track position is definitely going to help them out. If they can lock in some early dominator points, it might be enough if they can hang around the top 5 and pick up fast laps throughout the day. But I definitely think the better cars are starting 10 through 20 here, and even a couple good ones in 7th and 9th with Christopher Bell and Kyle Busch. So it's not a lock that they just get all the dominator points early on. And these drivers can make up for it without the dominator points because they're going to get those place differentials. So it's something to keep in mind. They're turning plays for sure, but I'll have a tough time clicking on them, especially in like a single entry or 3 max. Probably more reserved for 20, 150 max builds, because even if they do lead a good chunk of stage 1, the dominator points just aren't as abundant as they were last week. It'll still matter a bit, especially if they can hang around, but it's up to your risk tolerance. Like, I don't think projection systems will like them very much because I just kind of feel like they're going to have them finishing around, I would say, like 7th through 10th. So you're going to lose some place differential points and finishing position points there, and some other guys are going to move through the field. It's just a matter of how many dominator points do you think they're going to get. As of right now, I don't know that answer because I have to run my projections still. So I'll end up seeing if they're enough. If you have a question on that, you can ask me in the comments, and I'll more than happy to get back to you since we don't have the live streams anymore. Kevin Harvick, Joey Logano, basically the same plays here. Both forwards, both starting around 20th and mid-pack. And both I have concerns about. Not as much with Joey Logano because he looked a lot faster in practice. 2nd on the 1 lap and 8th in the 5 lap. Kevin Harvick was super slow though. 33rd and 31st in practice. Thing is though, with this 14, they always find a way to finish in the top 15. It seems like no matter how bad their car is. They did miss the playoffs and so did Joey Logano. But I don't think they're going to completely just write it off. I still think they're going to have some juice in their cars. Thing is, though, I just kind of hate playing forwards at these track types. But if you're looking at the numbers for Logano and Kevin Harvick and the 6-race sample size that we're looking at, they've actually been pretty solid. Kevin Harvick with a 9.2 average finish and Joey Logano with a 15.3 at their price points. I still think they got to be in play, and they are pretty cheap over on FanDuel as well. So as much as I want to say I don't want to play them, if you are trying to get away from these drivers starting up in the very front, I mean, those are your pivot options there. And if you're trying to get different, you play the guys up front. So I definitely think they'll have more ownership for sure because they offer your PD. Dropping down to the 7K range, we have Ty Gibbs starting in 4th. Fired off pretty slow, 22nd in the 1 and 5 lap, but after that got a bit better. 8th in the 10, 4th in the 15, and 3rd in the 20. The talent is obviously there with Ty Gibbs, and he always has a fast car. It just feels like there's issues at some point every single time. But he was actually able to run up front for a little bit at Bristol and had a pretty solid run. But I think Ty Gibbs is an interesting tournament play just to try to get off of Joey Logano and Kevin Harvick chalk. Alex Bowman in 14th. I feel like he could be a top 15, top 10 kind of guy. And at that price point, it's kind of hard to pass up in a Hendrick car. If you're looking at his numbers, 5-race sample size, 13 average finish, 13 with the average running position. Also has multiple top 10 finishes to his name. So at that price point, I think he's got to be in the pool. Daniel Suarez, I'll probably end up passing on. Just didn't really show me too much in practice. I feel like he kind of out-qualified himself a little bit. 25th in the 1, 27th in the 5. We got to start fading some guys. So I think Daniel Suarez is one of those drivers that I'll be lower on. Eric Jones looked fast in practice. 6th in the 1, 3rd in the 5, 12 in the 10, and 10th in the 15. I know he's starting kind of far up, but it is kind of tempting in GPPs because I feel like Eric Jones at these larger tracks tends to bring some pretty good speed. And ever since they dropped Noah Gragson, the Legacy Motor Club team definitely has some juice in their cars. Eric Almirola, $7,100. He's starting in 21st. Typically don't like rostering the Stewart-Haas drivers at these kind of tracks because it's been atrocious so far. As you can see, his average finish is around 20th, running position around 21st. He did practice well, which is he's got the one thing going for him, but I don't think he's going to be a top 10 car by any means. He is really cheap on FanDuel if you think he can hang within the top 20, but I almost feel like Eric Jones is a little bit more tempting for GPPs there. Dropping down to the 6K range, Ricky Stenhouse Jr., who was looking to be the chalk of the entire slate, starting dead last. They ended up letting him do another lap and change his tires on pit road because he didn't take the green yet. Whatever, weird rule, but he's starting in 24th, practice around 16th. I do like Ricky at these bigger tracks, so I think he's fine just if you want some cheap place differential. Austin Dillon starting a bit too far up for me to have much interest. AJ Allmendinger is one of the fastest cars in practice and also one of the fastest cars in qualifying. I kind of doubt that he's going to be able to hang there the entire race because, yes, he does have track position, but think about the drivers right behind him. You have Kyle Busch, Christopher Bell, Reddick, Truex, Byron, Hamlin, Larson. I just don't see how he's going to hold those drivers off, so I'm assuming he's going to fade back. Carson Hocevar, 6,500 bucks, starting at 19th. He was legit speed at that Bristol race. Like, he was really, really good. I know Noah Gragson wouldn't have been doing that. So I got to give a shout out to Carson Hocevar. Absolutely balling out. Top 20 in practice, top 10 in the 10 and 15 lap runs. Starting at 19th. It's not going to feel good, but I think I'd rather play Hocevar over like an Allmendinger or an Austin Dillon on this slate. Michael McDowell starting in 17th. He missed the playoffs, but fast in practice. First in the 1 lap and second in the 5. I think he's kind of in the same boat as Hocevar, where they can have impressive runs relative to their price points. Chase Briscoe drives a lawnmower at these track types. Ryan Preece also typically drives a lawnmower. Dropping down to the 5K range. Justin Haley, 5,900 bucks. He's starting in 28th. Practice in the top 20. If you're just looking for cheap PD, at least he had some speed. Austin Cindric is awful these days. I mean, 5,800 bucks, starting in 32nd. You think we could have some interest in a Penske car, but it's pretty much right where he practiced. 32nd on the 1 and 33rd in the 5. I would not be surprised at all if he just kind of sits back there the entire race. Corey LaJoie in 27th. Practice a bit better there. I think I'd rather play LaJoie over Cindric, to be honest, just based off of practice speeds, but it's not saying too much. Harrison Burton was pretty much the slowest car on the track. Zane Smith is in the Todd Gilliland car this week for front row. So they didn't swap because Zane Smith's not in the Cup Series. But Todd Gilliland is in the 51 this week for Rick Ware. And then Zane Smith took over the 38 car. So they're not doing the thing where they bring an extra one in and Zane runs the 36. But we know Gilliland has had some decent runs before. And I would say Zane Smith's probably a better driver than Todd Gilliland. Problem is, though, practice wasn't too impressive. 34th, 32nd, and 16th. I don't hate Zane because he's starting 33rd, and I feel like he's not going to go backwards, but I don't think the upside is extremely high. I would rather play him over Todd Gilliland, though. I mean, I know Gilly was P30 in practice, but I do trust a front row car more than a Rick Ware. JJ Yaley, 35th. I liked him last week just because he lets you fit in the studs at Bristol. He's viable if we have some carnage, but I don't think he's going to pass people based off of speed. And then Ty Dillon, BJ McLeod, I just can't do it. With that being said, guys, that's all I got for this week's video. So I hope you did enjoy. Even if you didn't, leave a like on the video. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet done so. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, leave them down below. I'm more than happy to answer you. But I wish you all the best of luck. Check out the NFL content if you haven't yet done so. And I will see you all next time.